Hello, welcome back to the University Podcast. My name is Jamie, and today our episode is going to be on what life at university is like when you have ADHD. As I said, my name's Jamie, my pronouns are they, any, so they, them is perfect, but any others is absolutely fine. I am an intern at the university in wellbeing and student engagement, and part of that is running the ADHD peer support group for students at this university. I have ADHD myself, which is why I volunteered to host this episode. So if I could ask my lovely guests to introduce themselves.
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Hannah. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a student here at the university. I'm doing directing for theatre, and I'm in my third year, so I'm just about to graduate.
I'm Robyn. I've just finishing up my second year, and I do creative writing. They, them, pronouns I prefer.
Perfect. So I just wanted to start with like a very brief definition of ADHD, which we can go into later also. But I took it from the DSM-5 TR. I don't remember what all of those letters mean, but it is the diagnostic kind of medical manual for mental health and neurological conditions. So what I got was ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder defined by impairing levels of inattention, disorganisation and or hyperactivity, impulsivity. Just before we start actually discussing, brief disclaimer that none of us are professionals, mental health, medical, any of those. We are just individuals with ADHD chatting about our personal experiences and our experiences of kind of knowing each other and being at university. So, first question we have is about diagnosis. So, does anyone want to start about how they got diagnosed, if they are diagnosed? I'm very happy for either of you to be like, yes.
Yeah, I don't mind starting. So my kind of journey was discovering differences about myself and like traits. I think a lot of it came through conversations with friends. There was definitely struggles that I had through college and then with coming to university as well. But my way was I booked in with a GP to have an assessment in which he gave me one of those, and then we did like some tests and things like that. And I got a letter, like a formal letter saying that I struggle with like ADHD. Like it was kind of like an informal letter. It was like I have ADHD traits and this could be like symptomatic of that, and then also struggles with low mood and anxiety. So like that was kind of my letter, and then it gave me access to having a DSA and things like that. It was really good. It was kind of an unconventional route because it wasn't the typical way you get a diagnosis, where you go through with the like NHS and you go on the waiting list or you go private.
Yeah.
That was sort of my way about it.
Cool. What about you, Robyn?
I initially went to my GP. My GP for an autism diagnosis. They said, "Have you also considered that you might have ADHD?" To which I went, "If you think so, sure." And then they, because of the only one of them being available through the NHS at that point as an adult diagnosis, they sent me to the ADHD thing first. There was a couple of months of a lot of online paperwork. There was a lot of paperwork. So I filled that out.
Not the most helpful for ADHD
I sat
or
down
anyone
with
really, but yeah.
I sat down with my father and went through that, and it took time, a lot of time. But we did finish it. I think I prioritised it over like making my uni application at the time, which I then did all of my online stuff, and the rest of that week it was not a good week. Then they that was submitted to them. I think it was some time until they booked an appointment with me to actually talk it through, but I can't quite remember. And then I've got, so I was with Psychiatry UK. They're like a private company, but you can do it via the NHS. And then I went through initial titration over medication because I got the diagnosis that was all fine. I booked it at like I think it was the New Year one. I think I booked it for like ate on like either the 2nd of January or the 1st of January, and then procrastinated making the phone call to change it so long that I just stayed up until New Year until 5, and then the next day went, you know what, sure, this is fine. It was great. Then I got the initial titration medication, didn't agree with me, so I'd stopped that. There was the shortage over the last year, so I couldn't go on titration again. And now I'm on a different ADHD medication, and it works better. It doesn't make me do things like want to fall over and not eat.
Fair. So you found medication, especially now, overall more helpful?
Yes, it's really quite recent. I'm on like my halfway through my third week. So that's adjacent at the moment, but yes, no, the medication's really good. I'd be very, very sad if I didn't have it, because the ability to sort of choose to concentrate kind of really helpful at uni.
Yes, agree. Yep. Agree. My medication helps with that as well, being able to actually be like, I'm going to focus now, whereas the most of the other time I don't necessarily have that choice. It just kind of happens. Yeah. Okay, so did either of you, because I'm very aware that diagnosis and the diagnostic process, especially with things with ADHD, might be more difficult for people who are women or femme presenting. Did either of you have any difficulties around that?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Say more.
More is my first doctor I went with, my GP in the place where I'm from originally at my home. He just kind of shut me down completely, dismissed me. He sort of said, well, you've just, maybe you have a bit of anxiety if you try going for a walk, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Correct for anxiety either.
Helpful.
Yeah. But it was like I'd waited so long to get even just that phone call, and it was quite like the fact that he wouldn't even listen or refer me on to anyone else. That was disappointing, because there was no next step. Like, at least I could have that in my mind that there was, but there wasn't. And then I got a new GP since like moving to uni in Chichester, and they were really helpful. So
cool.
Yeah. It's because I was going for my autism at the same time, they're a bit tied up, but yes, it's I mean, I saw our initial GP first, and we booked an appointment and went in. I wasn't asking my ADHD at that point, but they didn't mention it. They just told me I didn't look autistic, so that was... Clearly they were very competent.
Also very helpful.
Very helpful. And then that was only because I'd been seeing a counsellor, and they said, have you considered looking to an autism diagnosis? To which I said, no one has ever told me to do that before. Sure. And then I immediately did it. I mean, I've got a great aunt that works with like children with special needs, and all of my childhood, it was in like sixth form before anyone said to me, have you considered the fact you might be neurodivergent? And I was like, no, this hasn't been brought up before, somehow, because I've been seeing like various different counsellors on and off with the school for different things because of early grief. So surely someone must have known something about it. So I then went, okay, I'm never going to the GP again, and went to talk to my head of year, who I saw like every 2 weeks for brief meetings, for her to go, so is school still fine? To which I was like, school is still school, but yes, it's going fine academically. And then she was like, okay, they probably shouldn't have done that. And I was like, well, I was going to just accept my fate. And then she's sent me to their school department for where they dealt with that sort of thing internally. And then one of them called up my GP practice and said, can we have someone who deals with people who have autism, etc., regularly with neurodivergence, available for an appointment? And I went with someone. And then I went into them. There was like an hour conversation where they actually asked me questions and didn't give me like a 10-question diagnostic thing. Go, oh, you're one below the line because of technicalities answering. It couldn't possibly be relevant. So they then went through the whole thing like, yes, yeah, you sound autistic, and also you might have ADHD. And I was like, oh, okay. And they made me do the film for that too, and yeah, that was also high. So then they gave me their contact, said we'll make an appointment in the future to follow up with, and they were really quite helpful. They made me a temporary letter as well that I could give to the school, but I mean, the school were already, if I asked things, like, sure, we can do that, because I knew the correct members of staff. But it was, yes, no. And then once I was in the diagnosis surface, they were fine about the fact that female presenting, but it was very...
There's a long road to get
It was more in the complete lack of anyone saying, have you considered the fact that your lifelong difficulties with things like other people, just in every sense of that word, might have a cause.
Yeah, I feel like it's really overlooked, especially in people that are not men or masculine.
And it doesn't help that I have, like, I've never had problems with the exam bits of school, just the break time. I just was like, what do you do in break time? Wait for it to end?
Yeah.
I preferred reading through it because, yeah. But that was very much, it was just no one. It wasn't, like, I saw the homeschool link worker at my school, like, regularly for a couple of years. Still nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like on my own journey, and for a lot of ADHD people, especially at this level of education, it's a lot of kind of misses. A lot of times that someone could have said, maybe, and it just hasn't, either due to lack of awareness or stuff like that. So it can make everything kind of 10 times harder. Considering we've talked about some of the difficulties with diagnosis, are there things that either of you enjoy about having ADHD? Because I'm aware that it can be very much kind of disorder, language driven, which I don't necessarily, I absolutely don't agree with myself. I like to view it much more as a condition or a difference, because obviously there are difficulties and stuff that is disabling and stuff we struggle with, but there are also things that are fun and good, in my experience anyway. Like, is there anything like that for both of you?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think I'm very much in tune with how I'm feeling with that, and I can be quite empathetic, and I think that is a good thing. And sort of when you're with your friends, you can have like deeper connections and deeper conversations with them. And I think when I'm with the right friends who will listen, they'll really, like, we'll just really talk forever. And it's also really nice because that's the way that, like, we can connect. And just, I think that's a really good thing. And I think just the thoughtfulness and the caring, the thinking has got to do some good. And I feel like I can just think about things a little bit more and a little bit more deeply, and sort of be more aware of, like, my friends' behaviour and what they're doing and what I'm doing. And I think that kind of makes our friendship a bit more. So yeah, in terms of the social aspect, that's the positives.
For sure. So, like, because our brains process a huge amount of information compared to more neurotypical and normal people, there's so much going on that some of it can be really good, and some of it, like, we connect lots of things, and we can also connect with lots of people. Is that kind of what you're...
Yeah, that's basically what it is. And I think it just makes it kind of like, I feel like I'm quite lighthearted. Like, I think I view things as kind of like fun and as they are, like, and normally just kind of straight to it, like, and because there's so much more that, like, bothers me, so that actually, like, when I'm with people or when I'm doing my own things, there's not much that bothers me, because it's like my ADHD or like things that I'm so used to being annoying, and like then I can just have like breaks with my friends and doing those activities, so I can just find it a break. Yeah,
for sure. What about you, Robyn?
So much of that was fascinatingly not what I experienced.
That's fair enough.
So many tangents I was trying to suppress there. Successfully though. That is bizarre. Sorry.
No, don't apologise. It's good to hear how you feel about it as well.
I mean, I've always quite very particular interests, and I have not swayed from them. I'm still writing about dragons.
Which is
younger
good,
me would
on
be
a creative writing course.
Yes, that's what. But the very much I know what I like to read, what I like to write, and it's. Anytime I hear someone talk about Small Robyn, they're like, and then Small Robyn said this, and I'm like, I agree with Small Robyn.
Yeah.
So I very much have had strong opinions that I still mostly quite consistently agree with for the most part. So there's that. Whereas people who are neurotypical seem to be somewhat wishy-washy with whoever they're talking to, is whoever they're mimicking, and they'll do things like, oh, I won't admit to that opinion in front of them, which is all which is all strange social chameleon behaviour, and I find to be utterly useless in communicating, because then you don't actually know how people think and feel. And I would much rather someone stand there and talk about, I don't know, planes, which I don't remotely care about, so long as they look and sound interested, than they stand and try and make useless, uninteresting small talk.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've always quite enjoyed particular interests, and my memory for them is really good. So I can, for instance, spout off lots of facts about Lord of the Rings, and I've always quite liked this sort of thing. I can split between hobbies fairly well, and you just pick things up if like an spree, and then they're there for if you want to go back to at any point in a phase. That's nice. I've always generally been against the principle of, oh, if you were different, things could be easier, to which I've gone, but there's nothing wrong with me. Which has not always factually been
100%.
true.
There can be, yeah.
But
always
that's more the anxiety
wrong,
because
yeah.
comorbidities. But
For
it's
sure.
very much in general. I've always disliked people going, "Oh, if you could just make a thing that made all these problems go away," I'd go, "Absolutely not. I would not be me." Thank you.
Yeah.
So in general, it's very much. I think my father described it as I have a certain kind of straightforwardness, and not caring what other people think as a type of not fearing that social judgment, compared to my brother, who's sometimes he's just fine with social things, then sometimes he just reacts like there's sudden social rules he can see in front of him that are compelling him to do certain things, whereas I have not done that. Hasn't usually made things very straightforward, but I think principally that I would absolutely agree with most of the things of generally, wow, if you didn't make that clear, then maybe that's a you problem. Along the lines of explicit communication, because you didn't say you wanted to talk about something else? Well, you could have. I don't think I can be held accountable for not noticing these things when you weren't telling me them. But obviously I've also got the difference of bleeding into autism and ADHD, but in general I've found that I quite like having certain things, and it's also, you can just go with things when you're out and about. That's quite fun. So people who decide that fleeting joy is pointless are all miserable. They're like, oh, you get excited over seeing squirrels, to which just like, you don't get excited over seeing squirrels. Do you not go outside, see squirrels, and go, glory be, there is a squirrel. Is the animal not cute? Is it not doing exciting things?
No, 100%.
Like,
So agree.
I know it's a meme, but genuinely, squirrels are exciting, and anyone who doesn't point out animals when they're out and about is either really into something else, I hope, or else just dead boring. Like, why wouldn't you want to try and enjoy things when you're out and about and going, the world around me is cool and exists, actually? Like, what's the... You should go on. I'm not going to stop.
No, for sure. I feel like all of the things you've said about yourself, knowing you from group and for a couple of years, I fully agree. You are so unapologetically yourself, and I appreciate that to the ends of the earth. Like, I think it's incredible. And also, I think a really exciting thing is, although we can sometimes get bogged down because we feel everything and we feel it very deeply and everything can be a lot, it also means that we love the tiny things. Like, we can be so passionate about things like seeing squirrels, and it brings such like a joy and magic to life that some people just miss because they're kind of busy being normal. I don't know.
Pigeons
Like,
vermin.
not
It's
in a
terrible.
bad way at all. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Fab. Right. On to academics. So, how do you feel like ADHD has impacted your academic performance? And what strategies have you found helpful for staying focused and organised? Would you like to start, Robyn?
I mean, I can. What I was going to add was, I mean, I can say it, but it won't be that helpful. It was, what strategies have you found? Most of my academic career developed horrible anxiety about deadlines. Missing a deadline's death.
Yeah.
So that meant that my
Which
homework
is not
was
necessarily a helpful strategy.
almost
Let's just
all
say
the time.
that.
But also, when people are like, oh, you can just do it later, it's like, no, you don't understand. If I have the mood to do it now and I don't do it now, it will never get done. There is now and there is not now. I can only control one of these things.
A very common ADHD experience.
Yes, I've got really quite
Now
bad
and
time
not
blindness.
Yeah, no, not now
so-
are the only times that,
Yes.
that we kind of experience.
Academically, I find things like etymology are interesting. I like learning, and I like lots of new things because it's novelty, so more facts, more reading non-fiction, more watching documentaries on animals mainly, but I've like, if someone else is interested in something, I'm quite happy to sit through them with it. Having talked to more people who are ADHD now, they're much better conversational partners because they speak at the correct speed. They're not so boring, and they skip out all the bits I don't care to do.
The correct speed being a speed that you appreciate.
The correct speed being one that isn't too slow that I start getting distracted and staring at other things because they're not being engaging enough.
Which is your experience, and that is understandable, but we don't all hate slow. Robyn doesn't even hate slow speakers. It's just it's a different experience.
But if someone's speaking faster and they're being mildly boring, it's easier. It's just like,
no, I get it.
Stare out a window and then you need to make them repeat everything. And I just feel a bit bad for that. So if people speak faster and go on like fun info dumps, then where you would just wait turns to go in circles, and everyone has a terrible memory, so you can go over the same topics as many times as you want. It's genius. But academically, so I've done fine academically because apart from revision, because I quite like learning in general. Lots of different topics are interesting to me, and I've always had the I need to be doing this because obligation. I will not compromise on this in the slightest. So when people are a bit like, because I have that with rules as well, people are like, it's a one-way system, to which is like, that's nice. Let's walk 5 minutes to the same classroom from the same classroom. You avoiding the one-way system. I'm going to follow the correct route, sort of thing. So in general, academics-wise, there's that, and also teachers are interesting. They had life experiences that are accessible, that you can go, ooh, tell me things. Tell me of the outside world. But I tend to do things like go to the library instead to read for breaks. So academic-wise, I've been fine. Revision, not my thing. Generally, although I do remember one test that irritated my friend, what I did generously, I'll call it 45 minutes of revision, and then got like full marks on the test because it just had stuck information wise. But I won't make revision resources, so if I make them in class where there's a setting to help me focus, I can do that. But I had a really bad home-school split divide. Home is not the place for doing work, school is the place for doing work, sort of thing, which meant concentration at home is every task took 3 times as long. Like, no matter how much homework I did, I would never finish it and get to do leisure activities on the same afternoon.
Do you find that at university as well, that you struggle like where you live to do your work?
I struggle to do leisure activities at uni because I see it all as a place of work, and then I give myself horrible stress. Okay. I mean, generally the library's sometimes helpful, but I like control over my environment where possible about sound, so the top floor of the library is fine. It's nice and silent. There's not too many stuff going on, so it'll depend, really. But what helps at the moment is I'm now doing creative writing, and the further through education I got, the better things have been, because GCSEs cut out the ones you really hate. Great. A-levels cut out the ones that you're not interested in. That's nice. I'm now doing a course where basically everything on it is something that does interest me, so it's a lot easier to concentrate because it's specific. It's not pick every random thing, to which it's like, oh yes, I so care about your random historical conference. Why can't we just look this up in a textbook every time we need to use it? And it was really unfortunate with the English exams because they took out the ability to take notes from the text and they were made to just memorize horrible amounts of quotes, and that was not easy, so I need to either emblazon something in my mind. I can't remember my own phone number. Sort of thing. So academically, that sort of thing's been a struggle. I didn't need to do my GCSEs, which is probably quite fortunate. I just got given predicted grades based on my performance in classes, so because of COVID. So hooray! I did my A-levels. I did fine in them, but again, they were the ones that more interested me. And also when it hits like actual deadlines, it's like, right, focus, and then you come out of it and it's like, wow, I did great amounts of work and good amounts of not drinking. Yeah. So that academically, so I've had a couple of issues as well. I've not understood things, but I don't think that's the ADHD side of things so much.
What about you, Hannah? How kind of has ADHD impacted your life at university, your studying, and have you found any strategies that will help you or have helped you with that?
Yeah. So it has definitely affected my life at uni. I think the most common ways is just like paying attention in lectures, like retaining the information. I think it's quite difficult going from school to university, where at school you're taught everything, so it's almost like straight into your brain. You're taught and told what to do. You can kind of make notes, take the information. But uni, it's very much it's kind of you're on your own, and it was very like kind of thrown into the deep end with that. So it's affected that, and I struggle with like memory. So again, like retaining information is quite difficult.
Yeah, I write everything down because otherwise it just goes.
Yeah.
But like you've got the information. I'm like, yes, it's gone. It's gone. I don't remember.
No, absolutely.
That's fair.
It's the exact same. And like with lectures, like I can concentrate only for a certain amount of time, but they can be quite long. And just the nature of my department as well, like it's really intense and quite emotionally and physically draining. So I think like we are very creative, express yourself environment naturally with like drama and acting, but it is also very like you can get quite tired very quickly. So I've definitely struggled with that. But I think now doing it for 3 years, I have definitely learned how to cope with that, or at least try and make it as easy for myself as I can, because I know that I'm the only one who can do that. And I think, like you said, taking notes is kind of the number one, and like taking breaks, like when you can, and when is good opportunities to do that. And I think, sort of just trying to sort of pace yourself a little bit. Like you don't have to get everything into that one lecture. You can go back and look at notes and ask your lecturer for the video and like,
And I'm aware it's a very common ADHD experience to be very all or nothing. Like I must get it all done now.
Yeah.
And I think university especially is much more of like a marathon than look at me using running metaphors. I don't run. But yeah, it definitely is. You can't sprint your way through uni. You need to pace yourself. Otherwise you'll get burnt out.
Yeah.
Just to go back to something you said previously, just to clarify, because you mentioned about kind of it being like all on you and doing it on your own. Have you kind of experienced good support from your lecturers? Because I'm aware you probably meant like having to kind of manage your own workload and things.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
What they gave you for DSA for musical theatre to do with that then?
So it's kind of the same with like they give with the DSA.
For clarity, DSA, disabled student allowance. I just cut you off.
That's okay. That's fine. All good. So you get a mentor and like a laptop like on loan, or you get some of the laptop and like a printer / scanner to print notes out so that I have them in front of me. So that still helps with the academic and writing side of my degree, but not the practical as such. But I do get in terms of support in the department, like I think they are flexible. They know that there are a lot of different people in acting and a lot of different personalities, and it is overwhelming even for them. So
100%.
We do have breaks in classes. We're very much like they're very good with. We don't do anything we're uncomfortable with. We have to give consent, and we give content warnings for anything before classes. So yeah.
Cool. Fab.
Yeah.
A little bit of a tone change, but how has ADHD affected your friendships or making friends?
How about it first?
Okay. It definitely has affected it. Harder now than it used to be, but only because I'm becoming more aware of it. And I think before it's kind of like, I was like, I don't care, accept me for what I am. Like, I'm like, I don't have, like, I'm fine. I'm blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't have ADHD. I can just be like, I'm just fun and loud, and like, you can be friends with me. Yeah, I forget things. Doesn't matter. Like,
I'm just quirky.
Yeah, I'm just quirky. And
fair.
I think now that I'm like more aware of it, it's almost like I'm accepting it, but it's like also a little bit, it becomes a burden and a hindrance rather than a advantage, and I don't use that anymore. I'm just sort of like, sometimes I can be embarrassed, or just things around like social situations. I'll say something, or I'll fall over, or I'll drop something, or I'll forget something. That's a real issue as well. Just they'll say something, or they'll say a date, or their birthday's coming up, or a concert, and I'll forget it, and that affects my friendships because I feel like I'm being a bad friend. So it does affect it socially now when I'm like supposed to act more adult, and you can't like pass it as an excuse that you're fun and quirky anymore. It's kind of like it doesn't fit in with.
So
with
do you do
making
large
friends.
groups of people?
Sorry?
Do you do like groups of people then?
Like if I was to be in a group of people, like I think meeting people, it's fine. It's more like people I'm friends with, and we'll go on like trips or something, or we'll arrange something and I'll completely forget about it, or they'll say, oh, I'm going to this
I see.
Event that's happening, and then I won't ask them about it, and that's not because I'm rude, it's because I've genuinely forgotten.
It's kind of remembering not just events but almost like the social stuff that is kind of maintaining those friendships. And I really relate to kind of, especially as you get older and people are kind of expecting you to, I don't know, I think some people who don't know a lot about ADHD and don't know that it's not something that you grow out of, they kind of expect you to be more mature. And you're like, I am more mature because I'm older and I can deal with it more. But like the core tenets of what I am and what I'm like because of my ADHD is not going to change. And that's not a bad thing. But I fully relate because it can be so overwhelming when you expect yourself to do things that you struggle with. And I'm also very familiar with the shame spiral of forgetting things and being like, I'm a terrible person. I'm not, and you're not. Our memories just slip, and that's okay. It's just a thing. What about you, Robyn?
I've very much gotten more straightforward with it since learning. I mean, I've always known that my peers have not been on the same page as me, but I've never quite been able to pin down why. They were just difficult. So I've the more people I know, which is the older I get, the more I can pick and choose who I am actually interested in talking to, and can immediately forget everyone else. So that's when you've got limited groups, you have to make do with someone because otherwise you'll start going mad, which means that the access that's just as part of becoming an adult it's been easier. And particularly since diagnosis, I've had the words to talk about what happens to me and what will happen with a relationship. That isn't like a 2-hour long it's a lot easier. So that's definitely been increased. In general, I've had problems because I don't really care for short-term friendships. I don't really care about keeping track of mundane things like sometimes certain amounts of dates. I don't really like talking to more than a couple of people at the same time at once. I much prefer one-on-one because then they're more likely to not be strangely doing friendship politics, which I've never had the patience for.
I hate the friendship politics.
I'm blind to them. I was that person who went through all the school and then someone would go, I broke up with them. You were in a relationship? This was a year ago. What? We talked every day at the time. How did I not know this information? I swore I told you.
It's like it's like they're all watching the same TV show and you've never watched it. And then they're talking about like 5 seasons and you're like, where was I?
And people are like, don't you know them? They're from the popular group. I'm like, there's a popular group? I just knew people from classes and randomly, or like from my form or something, then people were like, oh yeah, there's that group fell out with that, and I'm just like, what world are you living in? How do you get information? How do you know events are happening at school? And just in general with people. So I tend to pick a couple of people, put relationship work into that, get it to a point where they're either fine with me, and which they should figure out quite fast, or they're not, and then I'll find someone else instead, and then go, wonderful, I have 2 friends, I'm good. So I then occasionally, I met more people via friends of friends, some of that by proximity in class, but I was very much that person who was, we've been told to stop talking and only talk about the work, I don't want to socialise with you. No, that's not relevant. Kick it out of the classroom. And I did definitely, I was terrible at making plans, so I never saw people outside of context that they just happened to be there with school, so that definitely meant I didn't see people as much as I could have. Beyond that, I did have, with my diagnosis, I figured out what a lot of things were. It helped me unpick a lot what was things I wanted to be doing, things I did because I thought I should that I didn't like, things that I did as accommodations that I could pick and choose when to do, and things that actually that's really normal, I'm just going to keep doing that, everyone else can, now that I've learnt that there's a reason for it, deal with it. I do remember one friend saying, oh, it's good how you didn't use your ADHD as an excuse for things. In hindsight, that's terrible. It is a legitimate disability. On another note, I'm not talking to them anymore. But that was over. It gave me a great assignment piece. I have a very angry letter written over it because they the other thing was they saw my diagnosis process. Then obviously when I was unmasking, they found me less tolerable to be around and did not communicate this to me directly. So they were like, oh yes, months passed. It was too late to salvage anything relationship wise to go, oh yes, it's just you don't really notice when I want to start talking. And it's like you wait for conversational pauses. I leave conversational pauses. You never seem to take them, so I just keep going because you don't suggest topics. And when I ask something they want to talk about, you're like, oh, not really. So I'm like, well, okay then. If we're having a conversation, it will be dragons. And that was very much a case of that specific relationship was definitely they couldn't deal with the fact that I had ADHD, so we just weren't compatible.
Yeah, it could be
but
difficult,
yes, in general, that normally happens really early with people. So it's what confused me was that it took so long for them to do that, because I'm completely fine if someone tells me I can't do things like if I'm walking with someone injured, they need to remind me every 40 seconds to slow down, unless they're holding my hand or my rucksack and yanking on it like no, in which case I can do that. Or with a stick now, I can moderate my pace with my stick. But in general, it's very much a case of no. There's things that I can tell people that I will not do. Things like I don't remember my father's birthday, and I've known him all of my life, obviously. I don't try and do certain things because I know I won't ever do them. But it definitely does create issues because like I've not wanted to interact with people in school because they're in a group, and I'm like, they won't be worth it. I won't get anything out of that interaction aside from being tired. Yeah, so it sounds like you were trying to be social, which is why I had more of the problems. And I think I just gave up on people a lot faster and went, wow, I like books.
I think a lot of that is really helpful, really helpful and important, because I think boundary setting in ADHD friendships is very important. Knowing your limits, being honest, because there are things that we struggle with and things that we don't enjoy. Yeah, and I'm willing to put effort into friendships. I can accommodate for other people. And now that I'm particularly aware of the neurotypical versus not, and because I do most of my anxiety work myself, that's not fair to put anyone else. So it's like, if once you recognise it, you can go, oh, we can both do accommodations, this can work. And then you realise that because you're in the minority, everyone else is less used to doing accommodations, and it's a lot of work, really, and they'd rather talk to someone of their own neurotype because it's a double empathy problem. And it's like, so you're not willing to put in relationship energy that's not even matching mine to make communication more possible. Great. Yeah, quite sad. I think another really important thing that you said, and I want to kind of maximise on, is that I think for a lot of us with ADHD, it's very difficult to have like shallow relationships, and lots of them. Yeah. Like we are very, I find especially, we're very good at 2 or 3 very deep, very close friendships, and more than that, at the same kind of level of intensity, becomes really difficult to manage because we want to do everything at 100%.
Unless they're chronologically apart and you can cycle in and out and people expect you to just drop off the face of the earth for a couple of months virtually, then that's it's okay.
True. If you don't have to consistently sustain it. Yeah, no, I get that. Okay. Have you experienced any stigma or discrimination related to your ADHD diagnosis while at university? And how do you cope with or address these challenges? Would you like to start, Hannah?
Yeah, sure. I think stigma for me has kind of been around just kind of, I don't know, it can sound really bad, but like I feel like because a lot more people are aware of neurodivergency now and different conditions, and it's becoming a lot more accessible to learn about it, let's say on like social media, there is a
I think more
kind of
than they are.
Sorry,
they think they're more informed than they are.
Kind of, yeah. It's kind of just about maybe they will say some things that they do and they'll be like, oh, it's ADHD or oh, it's autism, and they don't necessarily identify with it. So it's kind of a bit tricky to kind of navigate around not feeling like involved or feeling with someone who also has ADHD or autism when you're kind of like speaking to people that don't necessarily, and then they kind of like, because it almost undermines it and it almost just surpasses it to people who genuinely struggle with it. And I think when it's kind of made as a joke, that's like a stigma I struggle with at uni.
For sure. And I think just to kind of add on top of that, that this is not to like disparage anyone who self-diagnoses at all, because we all have like our different paths and processes for it. But I hear what you're saying, because in a similar way that people can kind of say other disorders and almost trivialize it, if that makes sense, in the same way that someone who is very tidy will be like, I'm so OCD, and you're like, that's not quite what that is. It just isn't. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of add to that and clarify, because I feel like I understood what you were saying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is good to identify what, like, and everyone does struggle, and I do understand that. It's just, it is sometimes a little bit tricky. And I think just stigma of, like, around people that I'll be, and as I said, I mentioned earlier before, like forgetting something or like dropping something, and they kind of like, even that I'm close friends with, they'll sort of like laugh it off or they'll joke about it, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool, and I'll kind of like laugh with it, but I don't really take it as a joke, because I'm like, oh, it makes me feel really like self-conscious. So that can be another thing that's a bit tricky as well.
No, that's fair.
Yes,
I've basically been fine. Can't say I've noticed anything particularly bothering me. Occasionally, there's a couple of debates we've had in class over topics in the modules where I have quite strong opinions, and I've not agreed with what other people have quite portrayed that as. Generally, I mostly leave it alone unless I think they're really quite dealing with issues of stigma, where they're contributing to larger biases that it's like, have you thought through your portrayal of that? And one that I will say actually is really annoying, not that common, just occasionally, people go, oh, but that's not experience people have about something, and it's like, you are a singular person, just like we are all singular people, and also you have a lot of traits that, you can identifiably put in majority. Therefore, to go around saying that's not a human experience, or that's not realistic for reading something, like particularly if you've got a character that does certain things, it's like, have you considered that cultural experiences, gender experiences, sexual attraction, etc., or romantic orientation, and also neurodivergence play a part in your and context of characters? So occasionally it's a bit like people go, oh, but that's doesn't make sense, and it's like, it does. And occasionally that can be more traits that I can link to, say, my ADHD, etc., and someone says, oh no, but no one would do that. It's like, you're trying to erase me out of existence, please cease. But in general, it's manageable, but occasionally people will try and universalize their experiences on how characters feel things, which is not the point of reading. It's the point of reading is to find out how it is possible that your brain could work and see it in comparison and go, this is how people. The point is it's to further understanding empathy, and also not to try and make everything fit into your worldview of how that thing works. So you can bring it up as a personally, I experienced this thing related, and then I don't think it would be, I think this nuance is possibly lost in there, but that's not the same thing as going, and I don't think that's an experience that is necessarily valid to write, which when a lot of the time it is just, it's an area someone's not so aware of. But generally I've not had any problems with people in my course. I felt quite bad about Auburn's missing deadlines. Like, I feel terrible whenever I have to go to my lecturer, so I know we had 12 weeks to come to you for feedback, and I never did that. I'm now never going to talk to you about this fact and the fact I feel terrible, because I really wanted to submit my essay so I could get a first read-through from you of it. Unfortunately, that didn't work, and I wrote it across 3 days instead, sorry.
Yeah, so you kind of worry that it's not necessarily stigmatising, but it's going to make people think of you a certain way because you didn't kind of prep.
Well, that's more internal stuff. So that's more internally generated. I feel a certain amount of shame over certain amounts of that, where I'm like, oh, there was so much time. They gave us such forewarning. They were so nice about it, and I have still failed them. But that's not anyone else imposing it on me. That's my own catastrophizing.
But I also I appreciate what you're saying, but I also feel like a lot of that is baked into like education and also like life. It's like you must do this in this certain amount of time, or there's something wrong with you, and you're like, no, I'm just a little bit different, and maybe I need some more time. But does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the DSA support I got with the study skills and the mentor have helped. I can now do things like read through my emails and make them sit there through it. I did a lot of reading through my emails in that time.
Yes, I appreciate when you reply to my emails.
It happens,
so that is helpful.
shockingly, sometimes. A lot more this year now I have support.
And I am also aware that I send a lot of ADHD group
I much prefer in-person
updates, so apologies for all of the spam email you get from me. I like being organised. And that is also me coping with my ADHD, because otherwise I would just forget.
Yeah, I have a physical planner now. It's great.
I'd much rather send too many emails than not enough emails. But that's just me.
No, it's great.
Okay, in what ways do you think universities can improve support for students with ADHD? And just as like a preface to that, we all have discussed previously that it's much more of a societal issue than an individual university issue. So we're not coming for any particular university, because a lot of them, and this one included, operates in the same kind of culturally constructed, I sound so smart, the same like culturally constructed system, if that makes sense. So they're following a similar thing and what's been passed down, but that's not to say that there isn't more that could be done and more that we would find helpful. Does that make sense? So what do you think would have helped you more?
I think having someone in the room with like lecturers or rehearsals, and it's a bit tricky maybe with my department, like if that is possible, maybe it's a bit more for like just lecturers in general over all subjects, but having I think almost like a teaching assistant, like someone in the room that's trained in mental health and they know that people in that class need support, then to have someone sit in and take notes for them and like take that information and so that student can go to the staff member and ask them any questions they need. I think that would be really valuable. I think I would have been appreciated that. Just sort of as well, like, because I've always been that kid that doesn't want to put their hand up in class because of afraid for getting it wrong. And I think uni is still a little bit like that. Like it still carries on. And I don't want to, like, in lectures, it is very much participatory. But I still would like come away from that and have to email my lecture after, for example, like asking them to explain something. I think just having someone there would be really helpful. Or someone to go to, even if it's not in that lesson, being buddied up with a support.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Robyn?
Can't believe you're one of the crowd of people who sits there uselessly not giving answers.
I'm
so sorry.
Hey, right.
It's so irritating.
Robyn, that was such a read.
Sorry. It's just so irritating. That's why I participate in class, actually. It's because everyone will sit there silently and it's like, if no one puts their hand up, we can't continue and move on to new things. We'll sit here in awkward silence and waste our time. So I've just always ended up at a certain point, once I was fine with the teacher, just answering the questions. And then it'd be like, oh, do I put my hand up this time? Because I want to try and get someone else to answer and I'm not doing the entire thing. It does mean it's quite odd. Everyone on my course knows me. Everyone in my course knows me and I know absolutely no one.
But I also feel like for you as well, because you are such like a completionist, that you want it to like ask all the questions and know all the information.
I want to move on with my life too.
But I also fully recognise that for some people that can be incredibly difficult, especially with ADHD and feeling very self-conscious.
No, it is a completely fine experience of you to have, and that was phrased very judgmentally, and I don't know what my tone was doing. It's probably also being judgmental. I am not holding it against you as a slight. I was just like,
just surprised
it's okay.
because
I didn't take
it was so different to your
horror.
own experience.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. So Robyn, we'll come to you next. So in what ways do you think that universities can improve support for students with ADHD?
Fair amount. It's obviously just having staff who are willing to do things like make accommodations, but everyone here already is, but that's obviously not automatic. So you've already got the SARA forms and sort of things. I'm assuming they've all read them, but they exist at least. The only main thing really that I could think of as a systematic change because of just how it sort of functions at the moment without keeling it all over would be mandatory breaks like every so often. Because if you've got 2-hour lecture, everyone is like, right, middle of the lecture, 5-10 minutes, off you go. But they don't have to do that. That's optional. Whereas, that's always a bit like, I wouldn't stay put in a classroom for 2 hours. I would need to be reading and therefore not paying any attention to sit down that long in one place. That sort of mandatory built-in expectation, you will have minutes to outside, that's like routinely scheduled by the uni formally.
So making it like a proper, I don't remember the word, but like a...
I mean, there was a 5-minute movement bell in my previous school.
Yeah.
That was to get between the school campus because it was all... the site was quite big, so it was running between classrooms. But in the double periods, they just let you out, so I'd go up and down the stairs. And I mean, I do that now with my lectures. Yeah.
So it's more like proper written guidelines to say,
yes,
for every 2 hours you should have a 15-minute
break. Something like that, where it's people can go out and do whatever random things that they feel suddenly possessed by the urge for. There's nothing else that's particularly coming to mind.
That's fair. That's all good.
Yeah, not really.
Fair. And I think those kind of breaks are helpful for everybody because, and again, I'm not an expert, but I've been reading about stuff like just regular brains needing like a break every 30 minutes to go and do something else. So I feel like we've kind of touched on it throughout this so far, but I feel like a lot of things that you can put into place to support people with ADHD, in the same way as lots of other kind of stuff you can do for other disabilities, it helps everybody.
Yeah.
Like it can help so many people if we just make it like a blanket thing that everybody gets like what they need.
Yeah.
I very much realise that I'm just an intern and I'm not high up anywhere, and there are funding things and actual like stuff that would need to be sorted.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good aspiration.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, theoretically. Oh yes, so I have an academic advisor, but we don't have like formal scheduled. You'll see them this often amounts. That might be nice. I mean, I could talk to them, of course, but I mean, I just didn't all of my first year outside of lectures I had with them.
So it'd be easier to properly have it scheduled so you don't feel like you have to do the work to reach out to them constantly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, possibly that, or just a set. You should aim to see them this amount of time per semester, just as a guidelines given, maybe explicitly.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Cool. And then what does support mean to you? So that could be like groups, family, friends, stuff like that. Like, what do you find the most supportive or helpful in your lives?
I think for me, it's sort of acknowledgement of like being aware of how I work and what I kind of need. And I think that comes from, when that comes from other people, that helps me acknowledge that and accept it. Because I think, as we've kind of spoken about, there's like a real kind of just shame of feeling like you can't do a lot of things, or just feeling behind or lost because you're on your own. And it's kind of, you're not on your own. Let me just clarify that.
Yeah, for sure.
You're not. But the feeling for me is there. And when I have my family that they are becoming more understanding of it, they are becoming more understanding of me, and just like little things that, like my mum, for example, will ask me, and like, oh, like, okay, you can get support for that. Like, she's more understanding of it now, and it just makes me feel really like warm, like so much better. That
it's that kind of external validation, external affirmation that they're aware something's going on, and they're happy to adjust, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's really nice. I think particularly for me, it's important like to have that from family, even if they can't personally help because they're not, my academics, but they can emotionally help. I think that's a really big one that helps me.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, initially with my diagnosis, it was very much me pursuing it. My father was like, "But why do you need that?" Which I went, "I'm getting it." Because I decided I wanted one, and that getting one would it didn't occur to me very often. I mostly assumed that other people were living in a nonsense world, and they were the clearly crazy. Before people explain things, it really makes you not very tolerant. But I liked getting the diagnosis, and so someone going, yes, it's a good thing to get it, would not have happened without a couple of other people, but that wasn't my father. That would have been nice, because it very much has helped me go, yes, no, it's not that I'm a problem, and that people may or may not have been trying to convince me throughout how everything's set up. It's not me. It's everything else. Or at least, that's a simplifying it, but it makes it's like, yes, I like the acknowledgement that the external problem is definitely contributing, and it's not just you are failing to conform to the system you are meant to conform to. So that's nice.
Yeah.
I generally things like volume. If someone's willing to discuss their volume, that's nice.
As in kind of volume, as in like being quieter when it's
loud
overwhelming.
noises. So obviously, if someone is fidgeting in a way that's annoying you, this is unfortunate. This is a clashing of fidgeting, but you can do things like negotiate. Can you do a different form of fidgeting? And that sort of
being
thing.
honest, stating your needs,
Yes.
and having people support you in
So
that.
boundaries as well. I like very explicitly given boundaries. They're my favourites. If people can't find them, this makes me quite sad. So if people can go through and figure these things out for themselves, tell me, and then do things like communicate when there are problems, that's really useful. And also if I like people taking me at my word, really quite importantly, because I speak too monotone to do things like humour, and also I don't get most of it anyway. It's a lot of pop culture references. So in general, I go with if I say something, I mean that. I assure you I mean what I said. And I dislike it when people won't do that. And I am aware it is because some people don't say what they mean, and they expect you to guess, and etc, etc. There's a whole host of reasons it might come up, and you might need to prompt someone to say a topic. Certainly if someone says, are you okay? I'll go, sure. If I've decided that okay is enough of a definition, but I won't say yes if it's not yes. So I've had, there are a couple of bits I've had with lecturers where until they got to know me personally, they didn't just take it's fine, it's not a problem immediately, because they kept going over it and was like, it's fine. I've said it's fine. I acknowledge that you're attempting to cause a problem you think is there, but it's not there. It is not there. Whatever you're picking up on that makes you think there's a problem there, I'm telling you it's not.
Just sort of sorry, I was just adding to that, actually what Robyn's saying is really important, because communication is everything, and I'm kind of the same in that, like, you do need just clarification, communication, because there's that like barrier then with me and my friends if there's not like a because I'm so like focused on like other things and myself, because of naturally like everything going on in my mind, that like when other things are happening I'm not so aware if like I get when people are upset and like stuff like that, but I won't like click it straight away. So communication is actually really important, that I think is not used enough anyway. So
and the upset people seem to feel when you ask questions sometimes is entirely disproportionate. It's like, oh, you should know that. I assure you, if I knew it, I would not be asking you it. You need to explain. But generally, if you find someone who can clarify, then that's good, or at least have an attempt, or someone can go, I would like to give you an answer, but I genuinely don't know how to. Fair enough. You can say that. Fair enough. That gets you off the hook. But just if someone does not understand, it's worth taking that in the best faith possible, that it is not understanding as opposed to anything else, and if not, then get them to clarify. And if someone is just deciding to be passive-aggressive at you, the best revenge is to just treat it entirely sincerely until they eventually feel guilty. Because they will eventually feel guilty and awkward, and they're like, oh, politeness has defeated me.
You can do, to be fair.
So yeah, in general, I've got friends who are willing to do things like acknowledge different energy requirements. I don't require certain amounts, but I'm more upset I'll need more communication from other people. And occasionally I'll do things like call people up to go, hello, it is my cyclical, it's been 6 months, I would like to hear your voice for proof you are alive.
Yeah.
So, checking that sort of thing is... and I like, sometimes I've preferred messaging styles or texting, going the, yes, I'm aware we've not contacted her, and you may have left this several weeks, that's fine. So just long messages that like left as sort of as letters, and just get back to them eventually, like replying threads, that's handy. So it's more that sort of minor adjustments that's not much of an imposition on other people. As well as if I do say something, just believing me it's real. So I don't really talk about the difficulties of my ADHD. Occasionally I'll say them and then everyone will make horrified faces at me because I don't actually talk about my emotions blatantly much. They're like, you sat through how much stress and decided this was normal and didn't say anything, and did you, why? And it's like, don't you know the world is distressing? It's unavoidable. But yeah, in general, just that, and just asking questions is always, if you don't understand, you can ask questions. That too. And if someone's deciding that they either, if someone says, I can't do that right now, but maybe later, fair enough. If someone says, I can't do that, but there are places you can find that out, here's a vague resource, or goes, look, I'm really sorry, but I'm not willing to engage with that topic, it would be too upsetting. Just anything that is, that all those can be said, there's no harm in asking.
Sure. Okay, so moving on to kind of past uni, how do you feel about kind of taking next step into your career? Do you feel the need to disclose having ADHD to future jobs or bosses? And how do you feel about ADHD and whether it might affect your employability or stuff like that? That's a lot of questions, but we can revisit.
Yeah. Employment spiel, go.
Yeah, there's definitely worries around it. More so just like my current job, so I'm a waitress at the moment, so I definitely struggle with just day-to-day kind of things about that job, with clearing plates and trying not to drop things, trying not to walk into tables with a customer sitting right there. So that's more of a struggle now, and I've definitely had that impact. But in terms of future, it's not what I want to do. I want to go down the creative path, and I think I'm very lucky that within the sector and the industry I'm kind of in with the creative arts industry, it's very accepting and open and welcoming, and you often have a lot of neurodivergent people in that community because we are very in tune with ourselves, so we create a lot of art about it. And hence acting, because we're very good at masking.
Very true.
But yeah, so I think I do have worries naturally, but I think not so much with what I want and plan to do. And I think disclosing it is completely up to the person and whether they feel it's relevant to do so with the job that they're going into.
It is legally.
Sorry?
It is legally completely up to the person.
Yeah.
You didn't say that.
Yeah, no, that's great.
I googled before we did this, and I was like,
Yeah.
It's not a legal requirement, because
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to accidentally come on here and tell people to break the law, but you don't have to disclose.
Yeah. No.
Just being very clear, legally, you do not have to disclose.
Yeah, no,
when
absolutely.
you're applying, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important because sometimes, unfortunately, the world we live in, sometimes disclosing that information becomes more of a barrier than getting the job without disclosing the information. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it is up to the person, and depending on what you go into. I think it's rather than disclosing it because you feel like you have to or you want to, or I don't know. But I think it's more when you're going into the job, making sure the people are aware of just what you need, and whether that it doesn't necessarily mean you have to say, I have ADHD. It just means I just sometimes need breaks, or so it's however much you want to say. I think it's important. Yeah.
I didn't disclose on my work placement when I did that through the module. I didn't see a point. Because I was just going to see how it went, and I didn't. At possible interview stages, I was like, not worth it. The lecture on how to interview properly was so irritating. Things like, just the general, here's how to appear polite. Oh, are you competent? That's the real question. And also not completely insufferable. Fair enough. So I didn't. I had the option. I was like, if I want to, I will on my placement. It was short term, so relatively short term. I don't. Not that important to me because it was already mostly virtual, and they gave me a lot of flexibility, so I didn't have any need for any accommodations that I would want to go. By the way, I'm justifying this with my disability. It's generally good form to give it to someone anyway, but I do have this as well to make specific allowances. But I didn't have any need for that, so I didn't. So it'd probably be a case of a longer term job. I just say it because awareness can't hurt. But it wouldn't be an immediate thing. And it definitely wouldn't be till I've like somewhat settled and gone, okay, by the way, for either of my things. Although there's not much difference between saying either of them. Yes, and that's in terms of jobs disclosures. That was something else I was going to say. That's really irritating. Oh yes, future. No, I don't think it'll cause much of a problem with future work. I have started ADHD medication now, and if anytime I don't have access to it now in the future, I will forever be lamenting its loss, because everything is so much easier with ADHD medication that works. Like, it doesn't change my ability to, like, what I can do, but it does make it a lot easier to start and to, like, stay on topic with my mood, etc. And it just saves me time, so much time. I'm just vaguely a lot less, I get less anxious as well because things happen. I don't need to fret about the fact that they may never happen and that be legitimate, because some of it is legitimate. And so that's fun. So if I didn't have medication, that would be really quite sad for doing things like working. So I would be anxious about the reliability of actually getting stuff done, because no promises ever. But particularly with it, no, I'm not concerned. And it's an area I know like that I'd like, so that would be helpful.
For sure, yeah. You just reminded me actually that I did a job for like just over a year before I was diagnosed with ADHD when I dropped out of university the first time when I was 18, which is longer ago than I'd like to admit. But I worked full time and I was not medicated, and it was hard. Yeah. It was really hard, especially because with where I'm at in my life now, it's not a job that like gives me joy.
Yeah.
And I feel like with ADHD, with or without medication, I think half of the struggle is finding something that actually doesn't make you feel horrendous to do it.
Things that's like
5 days a week.
It's not that you didn't choose to do something, it's that you just can't, and that's always very upsetting, because it's like, I should be able to do this. Everyone says you can just choose to do things and then do it. Why isn't it happening? And then that ends terribly.
100%. Okay, we're starting to kind of wind down now, so I've got a list of questions that I would like to ask you, and to the best of your ability, maybe answer in like one sentence. If you need more time, that's absolutely fine. I just thought, we'll try.
I'm sorry, that was just, I was like, one sentence, that's not short.
How long is the one sentence?
That's so true. I should quantify, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
So, ADHD is different for everybody. What is ADHD for you? I'll start to kind of make it a little bit easier. For me, ADHD can be disabling. It can also be exciting and fun. It's not all good and it's not all bad. It just is. It's uniquely how I experience the world, and it's just something that I have to kind of move through and work through. And so I find it. I actively practice being very neutral towards it, because otherwise I just hate myself, which is not ideal.
You're so philosophical about it.
Thank you. I studied theology.
It's lack of dopamine in the correct places, which means you can't do certain things because brain chemistry is not on your side, as well as general. You can get often because of comorbidities that could be traditional stuff. I get occasionally lightheaded. I think it's possibly the ADHD. I don't actually really know. And there's obviously the hitting into things, spatial awareness, a bunch of other side effects that are tad annoying sometimes, but depends. And then there's no, I'm trying to be quick. And then in general, it's just energy is not something that you command. It is something that will either happen to you or not, and you really hope that it aligns with your interest with what you're trying to do.
Cool.
Yeah. I think ADHD for me is kind of similar in terms of what both of you said. Really, it's kind of like the part that gives me freedom from people in the world, and I can do my own thing creatively and explore and just kind of be with myself. And I'm learning more to like enjoy that part when it comes, and like you said, like bursts of energy, and it also is a hindrance in places as well, and it is tricky. But I think because I've only ever known it, and it's just been me, myself, and I.
Yeah.
So I think it's something I'm still learning about. But it's best of both worlds.
I do want to add it's a legal disability, and I absolutely agree with that, because being disabled isn't bad. So it's not actually bad to be that, and it's about if society is set up to accommodate you automatically, which it is not.
Yeah, 100%. Fully agree. Disability is not a bad word. But our conditions can be disabling.
It does make
it's
things
important,
harder, but it's not inherently bad.
For sure, it's important to recognise.
Yeah.
In your opinion, do you think ADHD is overdiagnosed?
No.
No, obviously not.
Yeah,
It's underdiagnosed. It's got gender disparity in diagnosis, and then also just in general that no.
Yeah, no.
Good.
Don't say anything else?
Yeah, 100%. What are some, maybe one common misconception about ADHD you wish more people understood? For me, it's that people with ADHD have a deficit in attention. We don't. We have just the same amount of attention as other people. We just can't control it as well.
Yeah.
So we have the same amount of attention, I would argue. It's just sometimes we can, waste it on a project that's never going to happen because we forget to like do the dishes and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's the attention somewhere else, basically. Kind of like what I see it as. Yeah. Yeah. I think another misconception would be is everyone experiences it differently. And I think some people, it's a bit more internal, and it's kind of like, I don't know how you say it, like less kind of like physically shown, it's a bit more hidden, like maybe.
You can have stages of it. It's what you're meaning is you can have different amounts of ADHD. You're ADHD or you're not. Is I think your point.
Yeah, kind of. There are levels to it. But everyone does experience it differently.
Yeah. So the misconception is that we're all the same.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like a lot of the symptoms and traits do.
We share a lot, but you're right. It can be a mix of different symptoms at different levels and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you,
Misconception.
Robyn?
The most easy way to tell someone has ADHD is that they'll behave badly in class. That's just. I mean, if someone is frustrated, I can see why they might, but it's not. It's about attention and internal experiences of the world. It's not about how other people see you as a behavioural condition.
Yeah.
Which is why, for instance, that's why we have some of our gender disparity, because boys are tolerated misbehaving slightly more than girls are. So we have less girls diagnosed because they're like, oh, I'll just sit here and daydream, which is paying the exact same amount of attention as someone who's talking. It's just more invisible.
No,
and it's not actually to do with the ADHD.
And how we're taught to display it with our gender.
Yeah, so it's just... That's not how you notice it. It may be a sign, but that's not the main ADHD or not.
For sure. Okay, and then final question. What advice, maybe one piece of advice, would you give other students with ADHD who are starting their university journey?
No one cares. Like...
Expand.
So no one cares as in like no one cares like or is watching you or thinking about you 24/7. No one's looking at you 24/7.
So as in feel free to kind of
we care about
live
you.
How you want, is
like,
what you mean.
Yeah, just in the nicest way possible. To clarify.
Yeah.
But
we're not all watching and judging everybody else to see what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's university is your thing to do what you want with.
Basically, yeah. It's the reason why everything's kind of heightened in your head, but if we're gonna say that other people, normal people, it isn't heightened, so they're not thinking about you, you're thinking about yourself 24/7 all the time. So just give yourself a break, like be nice to yourself and find those moments to take breaks, and it's okay to do things on your own. And
there's enough to feel stressed about without putting stress on yourself.
Exactly.
I disagree with several of your points.
Okay.
But I agree with the don't worry about other people so much. That's not external perception shouldn't be control you. I agree with that. I just disagree with a lot of the other reasons you attributed to it.
That's fair.
Okay.
That's all good.
Yeah.
One thing. See, I feel like you went for a really particular thing, and I'm now like, is this the correct category to be in?
No, go for it.
If you oh dear. If you can get DSA, get it. Get DSA if you can, and as soon as possible. It is hellish paperwork. It was really quite hellish as a process, but like really quite difficult. Useful. Kind of wish I had it in my first year. Not that I'd have listened to anyone telling me that in my first year, so I don't imagine it'll be helpful. But advice. But it is actually quite useful. It's helped me do things like not submit all of my essays last minute, because I've done things like make outlines with someone beforehand by them sitting there body doubling. That is useful. That's actually useful.
Sure. No, that is just because it's very different advice. It is perfectly good advice.
Yeah, and do you know what I had that written down to say as well? Like, use the system. Like, use what you can get.
Because the things that are there can be very helpful if you know how to use it.
Yeah, it's just doing a little bit of research, and it is hard, but you have to kind of put in the work of like finding out what you can get, and just the support in uni, talking to people, trying to just like call people, like pushing people to help you, because it won't be handed to you. So yeah, use the system.
Society is a structured socializing if you really need that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's a great point to end on. So I just want to say thank you so much for both of you for coming on. I've had a great time.
Yeah.
I don't know about the viewers, but I've had a great time. And I think we've covered a huge amount and done some really good chatting, which is what we love. So yeah, thank you. And if you could also follow us on social media, they should pop up somewhere on the screen. Don't know where, but they'll be there. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, and I'm sure we will see you again soon.